So we have descended upon that time of year again where we are served our seemingly yearly dose of Nadal Djokovic as the two gear up for a 59th meeting and record-breaking 10th meeting at a single major, a record that stands among both men's and women's tennis. So, naturally, the reason we're all here is to discuss who's gonna win. I will, of course, be taking the next couple minutes to explain both players' paths here, the dynamics of the matchup as they currently stand, as well as my pick to win. So, of course, me being the shameless fanboy that I am, the thing that is freshest in my mind at this point is still Nadal's 5th set win over FAA, so we are going to chart out Rafa's progression throughout this tournament. So, of course, as far as Rafa is concerned, it is quite jolting that we saw this man go to a 5th set only for the 3rd time in his French Open career. Keep in mind, this is a track record that features, I believe, over 110 matches, and it had been almost 10 years since someone had taken him 5 sets at Roland Garros, going back to the 2013 semifinal against Novak Djokovic. Now, I'll get to that match, but Rafa's path through this tournament, the first 3 matches, in my opinion, was very clean, better than I could have expected given the prep that he had and how short on matches he's been this clay season on account of, first the rib injury, then the foot flaring up. But good news for us, throughout his 4 matches now, a 3rd one that was pretty long, that left foot seems to be behaving for now. Fingers crossed that keeps up. And on the court, I think that Nadal, especially the first 3 matches, was quite clean. A couple of yips in closing out a couple of his matches, but nonetheless, especially his 3rd round against Botic van de Zandschulp, someone who hits the ball really big. And for 2.5 sets, Rafa pretty much toyed with him. I think by far that was his best match of this tournament. And then we get to the Felix match in the round of 16. Now, I'll be completely upfront. I expected this to be a straight set win for Rafa. I wasn't really seeing the challenge in FAA on this court, but, to my surprise, all credit to Felix, man. I mean, I gotta take this time to shout him out a bit. Felix, over the last year, basically in the time of the existence of my channel, I've said has been taking baby steps, but this year, it's been a giant leap in contrast. I was very impressed from the beginning with ATP Cup, and then his Australian Open loss to Medvedev was terrific, and he had sort of, gone cold for a bit, but Madrid on, he seemed to pick right back up. And I do want to say, with grass coming up and probably being the next time we see Felix, he could be in store for quite the grass season, given he is one of the only of his young contemporaries to feel any type of comfortable on grass. The fact that he was having so much success spot serving so accurately against Rafael Nadal on Chatrier was just mind-blowing. Admittedly, in real time, it was also infuriating given so many of those winning serves came down break point, but that and his 1-2 was as good as I've ever seen it. He was just fearless with his 1-2 forehand and really never backed down or was fazed by the few that he was missing. Now, let's talk about Rafa in this match, because it was really, really strange how this match went down. He came out very, very tight. That is not unusual. It's not unusual at all for Nadal to come out of the gates tight as a drum. But, he snapped out of it predictably. Midway through the 2nd set, once he got a lead, he was rolling. After that 3rd set and the way that he was playing, you definitely expected a routine 4-set win. And incomprehensibly out of nowhere, early in the fourth set, the wheels fell off, and he kind of just shot his own momentum to pieces when he threw in an absolutely atrocious game in his first service game of the fourth, up 40 love, just a flurry of unforced errors to get broken there. Did end up breaking back, but ended up playing an equally terrible service game right after to give it right back. And I think from that point on, mid-fourth set till the end of the match, he kind of played Felix into form, gave him enough confidence, and Felix played better in that stretch than I think he did before that, because a lot of the first set and early fourth set was more Nadal throwing in some clunkers rather than Felix being particularly good. But, I mean, long story short, Rafa great in the 3 sets that he won. Unusually poor in the 2 sets that he lost. It is easier to get a rationale for that now in hindsight, He was always going to be susceptible to ups and downs like this, considering his prep for the French Open this year and how truncated it was due to the injuries. But, he looked so comfortable his opening 3 matches, we kind of lost sight of that. It was terrific that he was able to get through in 5, and that atmosphere in the 5th set was absolutely electric, The fan in me was absolutely eating up every minute of it. Nadal just really turned on the Jets, especially those last 2 games were just flawless, basically. I mean, the whole 5th set, he was excellent. There truly are not many sights in tennis that are more gratifying as a fan than watching Nadal and his fortitude on full display like it was Sunday in the 5th. That being said, he did not need to spend that extra time on the court. Even though I don't think this match was particularly physical and Rafa did not really show any signs of weariness throughout the 5th set and late in that match, that may end up costing him adding up with what is looming tomorrow. However, on the flip side, it is matches like that that really do help you get more match tough and get your legs underneath you from that respect. And from that perspective, I think there's a lot of good things and positives Nadal can take out of coming out on the winning end of this one. I will say throughout this tournament, I've been very, very happy with the intent Nadal has been hitting his forehand with. He's been hitting that wing so cleanly. Aside from, early in the 4th set, it kind of went off the rails against FAA. But that aside, throughout this tournament, he's been hitting his forehand so sweet. And the forehand up the line in particular has been something that's caught my eye. This is a shot that I think Nadal, as he's gotten older, has become more and more reluctant to pull the trigger on. And he uses that shot so sparingly these days, and it really is an X-factor shot for him, considering how much righties protect their backhand against him. Doesn't even really need to hit it all that well or precisely for it to break a point open. And I do remember for the longest time back in the early 2010s when he was duking it out with Djokovic, the forehand up the line was so key for him. That is an aspect of their rivalry that as they've aged, it hasn't really been there all that much, with the exception of Wimbledon 2018, where I think he had a lot of great success with that shot. And so, needless to say, that is something that I hope and I think he will need to carry over into tomorrow. As always, it is important for Nadal to serve well against Novak. Pretty standard stuff on that end. Backhand, on the other hand, as much as I gushed about the forehand, is a completely different story, but I will touch on that later. First, let us get to Djokovic's run here. Novak has been ultra efficient in his path to this quarterfinal. He is currently in a pretty strong run of form going back to Rome. He has not lost a match since losing to Alcaraz in the Madrid semi. Hasn't even dropped a set since then. And save a tiebreak with Alex Molcan in the second round, he really has dismantled just about everyone in front of him. Sometimes with Djokovic early in slams or even later on, he'll have these blips where it'll be enough for him to drop an opening set, and there's been none of that this tournament so far. Novak has been dialed in. I made note of something I saw in Rome, I believe in my predictions video or the video I did after Rome, where I said that it's looking to me like Djokovic's serve is going to translate better to clay this year than it did last year. Obviously the improvements to Novak's serve have been an instrumental part on how his game has aged so gracefully. And thus far, to the eye test as well as the numbers save his second serve win percentage against Nishioka in the first round, he has been dominant on serve. Lots of free points created for him through it, and that's been the part of Novak's game that has stuck out most to me at Roland Garros as well. Beyond that, I think we're just getting the Novak Djokovic that has been on this roll ever since Rome. It's been, the Novak Djokovic that we come to expect. Don't really think he's been tested. No one that he played really could threaten him all that much. Diego Schwartzman is an established and very good clay courter. However, as I said in my predictions video, he is someone who has just a terrible matchup against Novak. In the match they played in the round of 16, Djokovic essentially just suffocated Schwartzman on the court. There was really nothing that he could do to put a dent in Djokovic aside from a 3-0 early run in the second set. However, Novak snuffed that out quickly, and basically we've seen in this matchup Diego really can't do much unless Novak is just off, and that's been bared out in how his most competitive matches with him have been when Novak was at his lowest in Roland Garros 2017, and then Rome 2019 was a good showing. However, Novak, of course, was coming off the back of a brutal night match against Del Potro the day before. But anyways, I don't think that's an issue that Djokovic was untested. He would take this route that's been without much resistance to the quarterfinals any day over being tested. I think that, Djokovic and Nadal being the players that they are, there's been umpteen times where they've played up to the occasion and player on the other side of the net. And Novak being in the great form that he is in at the moment, he's in a great spot heading into this quarterfinal. He's going to have a full fuel tank. He does have the form advantage. And we now know that this match will be played in the night session, something that I don't think is as big a deal as some people are making it out to be. Beyond that, a wrinkle that was showed from last year's semifinal was with the Djokovic forehand and how he was able to really effectively use the short cross-court angles, stretch Nadal out into his backhand corner, and that really ended up being what wore Nadal down over the course of that match. He really was run ragged throughout that match after the first set pretty much. In addition to that, in past years, ever since Djokovic came back from elbow surgery in these two's matchup on clay, it really has been apparent that Novak's forehand has not been as penetrating a shot as it once was, and that really was something that was hurting him big time in that span in their meetings on clay. In contrast, last year we saw Djokovic get more oomph out of his forehand, really was able to put away a lot of balls that, just in contrast to the year before in the 2020 French Open final, Nadal was able to extend a lot more points in that one because Novak was just having trouble hitting through him off the forehand. And I am sure that this is something that we will see continued into tomorrow's match. There's nothing this year that's really indicated to me that Djokovic's forehand is any different than it was last year. Aside from the Musetti match last year, though, I do think to this point, leading up to the Nadal match, Djokovic looked sharper to me a year ago. He really dealt with an in-form Matteo Berrettini in the quarterfinals, who I think put up his strongest resistance of their 3 matches in the Grand Slams last year. And Novak was just exemplary in that match. I knew we were going to have our hands full when I watched the entirety of that match. I don't think he's been that sharp this year, but at the same time, he hasn't needed to be. And again, his great form leading in should be totally fine on that end. We flip back to Rafa on this. It does beg the question, what can Rafael Nadal do to combat this strategy that was so effective on him a year ago with the short angle forehands? What can he really do to stay out of backhand jail? Rafa is obviously not the mover he once was, or even the mover he was like 3 years ago. That speed is not about to magically, come back to him. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think the options are pretty limited. And I honestly think that the most viable option for him is to just bank on being at his ball-bashing best tomorrow. I mentioned Rafa's backhand earlier and my concerns with it. I don't think that I've seen anything this year that indicates that Rafa's backhand is going to be any better on defense this year than it was last year. That is just what it is now with his movement. Therefore, I just think he'd be best served if he's able to find just a otherworldly groundstroke day as he did in the 2020 French Open final. That whole tournament in the lead up, he never really showed anything on that level that he did in the final. And for much of that match, with how cleanly he was hitting the ball, he really was able to bully Djokovic for portions of it. I don't anticipate something like that happening again. Obviously Novak was off as well, and it's definitely not going to be that lopsided. But I do feel he's better off going about it that way. Rafa Nadal obviously has the tools to make that happen. His backhand defense has regressed massively. However, the attacking backhand, he's still more than capable of doing damage with that shot. Obviously, with night conditions, it's not going to be as easy to impose himself that way, but French Open 2020 also was played under a closed roof and played during the cold. It definitely still is advantageous for Rafa to be playing in the day on clay. However, I don't know if that advantage is as big as it once was. On a slower court, Nadal, with his decline movement, is capable of getting more balls into play, as he did in that 2020 French Open final. Also elicited a lot of uncharacteristic unforced errors out of Djokovic just by getting so many balls back in play. And even though it may be harder to hit through the court given the game plan I'm proposing here, but Rafa on several occasions has shown himself more than capable of executing that regardless of the conditions. After all, it is Chatrier. At the end of the day, any half-decent Nadal, his forehand is going to be the biggest and most explosive ground stroke on the court. I do feel that this is just the way Nadal's going to have to go about it now, even on clay. Djokovic is going to keep going to that well, I anticipate, of the short angle cross. And I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a tough one to pull out. It's definitely an uphill battle. A lot of checks in the Djokovic column when you really line it up. And, because of that, I have really no choice but to roll with Novak Djokovic in 4 sets. I do still think this match is going to be quite competitive. I expect a scoreline similar to something like last year. Obviously not sure if it can produce the same kind of dramatics as last year, but I still expect a fun competitive match. I don't rule out a Rafa Nadal win. This is certainly not the case of their 2015 quarterfinal heading in. It really is just really hard to write off those 4 hours Nadal spent on court against FAA the round prior. Even for him, the 4 hours might be a bit much, and then having to beat Djokovic with only a day in between. I don't rule him out, given that he showed earlier in Australia this year that if his body allows him, he's still capable of pushing himself the distance. Went 5 hours there after a couple of tough matches coming in. However, I said before the tournament that there really is no logical reason for me to pick Nadal over Djokovic in this matchup with the circumstances coming in, and as the tournament has played out, that really has not changed. Ultimately, the way I see it is, at this stage of their careers, Djokovic has a pretty substantial physical edge on Rafa. They are separated by only a year roughly. However, Djokovic is a much younger 35 than Nadal was at 35 and now is at 36. It really has been remarkable how Novak has been able to maintain this type of fitness so late into his career, and also just not lose so much ground on speed and other aspects of physicality the same way that his rivals have. It is Brady-esque for those of you that watch American football. It's just wild that it's still this good at his age, and it's something to behold. On the flip side, I just think post-pandemic Nadal has slowed down even more in that span, and in my opinion, Novak has always had the matchup edge between these two, so much so that you could tell even in like 08 and 09 that this guy was going to be the toughest for Nadal even on clay. And obviously, in both of their post-prime eras, Novak has completely taken over the matchup on other surfaces. Clay has been a bit of an equalizer for Rafa. He had the same type of stranglehold on that up until 2020, of course. And as Rafa's physicality has deteriorated over the last couple years, even that advantage has eroded. And if he is to be victorious tomorrow, it's definitely going to be a lot to overcome. Have to roll with Djokovic because of that. Regardless, though, it should be a fun one. These guys, whenever they play, especially now, there's such high stakes. And yeah, it's definitely time to kick back and just enjoy the show. God knows how many more matchups between them we're going to get. But that's all I got for this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, it would be much appreciated. If you could drop a like, help the video perform much better against YouTube's algorithm, and also subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and of course, I will see you all in the next one.